Abahlali baseMjondolo say they will not be joining tomorrow's planned national shutdown. The organization says even though they understand the reasons behind the shutdown, they are of the view that political formations do not have enough will to end poverty and injustices in South Africa. We're joined by General Secretary of Abahlali baseMjondolo's Thapelo Mohapi. Thapelo, thank you very much for availing yourself this morning. Before we get into tomorrow's events, I would like for us maybe to start with a brief history lesson, if you will, in terms of why and how Abahlali baseMjondolo came to be.
Thank you very much, Tutu. Good morning to the viewers. Abahlali baseMjondolo is a grassroots democratic movement that was formed in the informal settlements by informal dwellers. The movement today has about 115 membership across 5 provinces in the 9 provinces that exist in our country. We fight for, promote and advance the interest of the poor and marginalized, especially those who are living in the informal settlement and in the rural areas.
It's been 10 years of doing this kind of work, and every time you take to the streets, what are you faced with? Yes,
Abahlali baseMjondolo since 2009 were faced with brutal evictions that were at the gunpoint. Today we have lost 24 activists in the hands of the police, in the hands of the anti-land invasion unit, and in the hands of the hired hitmen that have targeted our members. Out of the 24 activists that have been killed in Abahlali baseMjondolo had been killed by hired hitmen that are hired by politicians in this particular part of the world. So we have faced a very harsh system that has targeted us in all these years.
Your allegation of hired hitmen who are hired by some people in the highest echelons in this country, what informs that and to what end?
Yes, Dudu, if you would recall, in 2016, 2 ward councillors who were serving in Ward 12 at the time were sentenced to life imprisonment, and as we speak, they are in Kokstad maximum prison for having gunned down one of our own, Tulindlo, who was the chairperson of Kwandengezi at that time. And of course, currently we have cases of Ayanda Ngila and of course Noktula Mabaso, who the perpetrators are already in prison, in custody. I won't dwell to that at this point in time. So these are just examples of the people who have been hired by politicians to actually carry the dirty work of removing activists for doing human rights defender work. So in some of the cases we have not had any justice because it's government investigating government, politicians investigating other politicians, and therefore we have not had any justice in the 24 in the other cases that we have had so far. So I can safely say with the Tulindlo case and the current recently assassination that took place in March and in May, that it has proven that there are people who are hired by politicians to actually remove activists of Abahlali baseMjondolo.
You challenge the notion that if you are from an informal settlement, you are a threat to society because informal settlements that keep popping up are often associated to the rise in crime in the country.
Yes, I think there has been a wrong narrative that if you are poor, people who are living in informal settlements, first and foremost, they cannot think, and there must be somebody who must think on their behalf and finish on their behalf. That's why you find that developments that are taking place in terms of the breaking new grounds, people are located 20 kilometers away, and the very same people come back in the informal settlement because they are looking for economic activities. And it is because government does not engage with the people on the ground, and therefore we are taken as people who cannot think, people who their state of mind has collapsed. Being poor does not mean that. It means that you are at the moment facing a crisis that is being caused by a government that is unable to provide services for the people in the informal settlements. As we speak, in KwaZulu-Natal, 74% of people who are living in informal settlement have no access to water and sanitation, the basic needs that are enshrined constitutions are not being provided to people on the ground. And therefore, if that such exists, it means that there is no equality, and that people who are living in shacks are not seen as human beings, but as human waste, and they are seen as people whose dignity does not count in the society.
You argue that there needs to be a political solution to change the social structures that keep us poor, quote unquote, as well as to overcome the corruption and repression in the country. What do you perceive that political solution needs to be? For 10 years, you've been fighting what you could positively say is a good fight, and to date, in 2023, you are still fighting. That would suggest what? That you are not being heard. And so what is this political solution you call for?
Well, we believe that people must organize themselves from grassroots level and find ways in which to actually survive. For instance, in one of the communities in Ekena, now we have a communal garden, we have a communal pottery, we have a communal shop, we have everything that's even a communal kitchen where children who are heading homes can actually find food, shelter. So you have a community that works together, and this is the organizing that we are talking about. We are talking about food security, food sovereignty that people have created for themselves, because we are in a crisis where there is no food for people. People are living below the poverty line in this country. There's literally no food in the informal settlement. The highest unemployed people in the country are from the informal settlement. With the energy crisis that we are having, people having to throw the last bit of that they worked for because it has been damaged and so forth. So people are actually, fed up, have come to say that it's enough is enough, and we are encouraging people to actually create their own independency so that they do not, rely on the state because the state has failed them.
What do you then say to somebody that says, well, the state has tried what it can? Yes, maybe more needs to be done, but it has tried. Because you oftentimes hear that as a result of migration for economic opportunities, then people come, for instance, to Gauteng, and then you see the mushrooming of informal settlements.
Yes, Dudu, you would remember that I argued that mushrooming and overpopulation and so forth, it is actually undermining the people who are living in this country, who are supposed to be catered by the government of the day, who are coming here to look for better opportunities. Informal settlements are homes to us. It's what we can afford. It is what we have, and therefore we expect government to actually respect them and take us and give us dignity. And I think that's the political solution in this country, that those who are poor, vulnerable, living in the informal settlements, who are unemployed, should be given the same opportunities, same respect and dignity just as anyone else who lives in this South Africa. After all, we are citizens of this country. We are frustrated. We want to seek for better opportunities, and that's why we come and leave our rural areas, because rural areas are underdeveloped, and we come to the cities to look better opportunities, and we must be afforded those opportunities, and we must be afforded the dignity that is given to each and every person and every human being that exists in this country.
Tomorrow, the economic freedom fighters take to the streets to say they are championing for that, for the dignity of those who have not been afforded that dignity. Will you be joining or subscribing to the march? Well, the protest.
Well, we actually agree with the demands that have been made by those who will be participating in the national shutdown. We agree that the economy is collapsing in this country, that there is state corruption at its highest level, corruption that robs the poorest of the poor of these opportunities that we are talking about. The energy crisis that we are facing at the moment, the poverty line in this country has increased, the highest unemployment rate in this administration. All of these we agree, and we agree with the basic income grants of 1,500 so that people can find means of surviving. However, we believe that this strike could have been organized properly. This could to accommodate people. We think that the manner and the tone that has been used is inciting violence, and therefore we are a peaceful movement that has been advocating for the rights of the poor and marginalized in this country in a peaceful manner, that also that does not want to see the repeat of the July riots. I mean, some of us were on the ground, we could see, we lost our homes and so forth. We understand what riots could cause for the vulnerable in this country, and therefore we don't want to be associated with something that can lead into that nature. But however, we hope that those that are participating in the strike will actually practice their rights in the manner that it does not infringe on the rights of others. But we are also concerned at the state's response that the police are all over unleashed in what is supposed to be a peaceful protest, and there's calls for the army to be on standby and so forth. These were things that were said prior to the Marikana massacre, and we are hoping that the government of the day will not infringe on the right to protest of the ordinary people that will be taken on the streets.
Indeed. Thank you very much, sir, for your time this afternoon. Thapelo Mohapi is the General Secretary of Abahlali baseMjondolo.